Welcome back to the Evolution of Horror. My name is Mike Munzer. As ever, I am your host. And what we're bringing you this week is a little bonus episode, a little horror board game special. And that's because, as I record this, we are smack bang in the middle of our 30-day Kickstarter campaign for the first ever Evolution of Horror board game called Final Cut. This is something that I've been working on and developing for 3+ years now in secret with friends of the pod Alex Ayling and Mike Lee Graham. It's a beautiful horror movie themed card game. We announced it during our 24-hour live stream, and on the 19th of February we launched our 30-day Kickstarter campaign. We were hoping to try and reach our funding goal of £10,000 by the end of the 30 days, and we ended up reaching £10,000 in the first 90 minutes. So I want to say a massive thank you to everybody who supported the game, who's helped us reach our funding goals so far. It's done so much better than I think any of us were expecting. It's been quite an overwhelming week. Alex and Mike and I were just sort of in shock in that first 90 minutes as we were watching those Kickstarter numbers kind of go up and up and up. It was really something to behold. So I want to say a massive thank you to everybody who has supported the project so far. We set different award tiers, and the highest award tiers, the monster tier and the slasher tier, sold out instantly. And I know a lot of you guys have been asking if it's possible to release more rewards from the slasher tier. That's the special edition version of the game where it comes packaged in a VHS box. That one has been selling like absolute hotcakes. We released a second batch during that first week on the campaign, and again, they sold out in the first minute. So we are going to release another 50 versions of the VHS edition of the game on Friday the 1st of March at 7 p.m. GMT. So if you want to pick up a copy of the special edition deluxe VHS version of the game, you need to be on our Kickstarter page ready to snap up your copy, because we're only releasing another batch of 50 at the moment this week. Basically, the reason, and I know people have been asking why are you not just making these ones unlimited? Well, because we're having to source VHS boxes to sell these games in, and you know what? It's been surprisingly difficult to source VHS packaging for these games. We don't get them specially made. We're having to buy them from secondhand places. We have to quality check them and make sure they're actually good enough to sell on to you guys and include as the packaging for our games. So it's not an easy thing, and that's why there are a finite, limited amount available. So if you want to snap up one of the next batch of 50 that we're releasing this Friday, just get on our Kickstarter page, evolutionofhorror.com/Kickstarter, sign up so you can follow us, you can receive notifications when the next batch go live at 7 p.m. GMT this Friday, the 1st of March. And we are going to be announcing more add-ons and stretch goals and that kind of thing, because again, at the point I'm recording this, we're only 1 week into a 4-week campaign and we've already reached nearly £20,000 and over 500 backers. It's been unbelievable. So anyway, I figured this would be a good excuse to talk about something related to the project. Now, this is something I've been wanting to cover on the podcast for a long time. I've always felt that there's been quite a big crossover between horror movie fans and gaming fans, right? Particularly kind of tabletop games, board games, card games, that kind of thing. I'm a massive game fan, and I know my co-creators Mike and Alex are also massive gamers. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to have a little in-depth discussion about the world of horror board games. So I sat down with co-creators of Final Cut, Alex Ayling and Mike Lee Graham, and we talked about some of our personal favourite board games, favourite horror-themed board games, and then we finished by reading a whole bunch of suggestions and favourites from listeners and patrons of the podcast. So get ready, because if you're anything like me, you're going to want to jot down so many of these games mentioned and order them online immediately. Please enjoy our horror board game discussion with Alex Ayling and Mike Lee Graham.
So, you want to play the game? My game.
Alex and Mike, hello.
Hi.
Mike, hello.
We've all got our quiet voices on for some reason. I don't know why I've got my quiet voice on, but Mike, you have a sleeping baby in the house right now as we record this,
Yes.
right? So we're all going for our quiet indoor voices.
We can all do it. It'll be nice.
It's like ASMR.
Exactly, yeah. Whispering Bob here to talk about board games. Alex, how are you doing? You're also a dad, and you've also had quite a tiring day.
Oh,
so
mate.
I imagine you're happy to have your quiet indoor voice right now.
I would much prefer, two men talking than 20 feral 7-year-olds charging about, which is what I had earlier this afternoon. So, yeah, this will be nice.
27-year-olds. Oh, my God. I love that. Well, this is all very exciting. The day we're recording this, we are up to day 7, right, of our Final Cut Kickstarter campaign. And it's been unbelievable. Earlier today, we crossed 500 backers. Alex, how have you found this journey so far? I can't believe it's only been 7 days, actually, since this launched, right?
I was sort of going back in my head to the Monday when we launched it, and feeling like quietly semi-confident about it. And then, like, as soon as we set the Kickstarter going and we started to see the total going up and people choosing to be a part of it, it was genuinely like an out-of-body experience. Like this thing that's just been in our heads and play tested with a few of our pals. All of a sudden, other people knew about it and wanted it. And yeah, it's been humbling, actually, is a great word. It's been really humbling.
It really has been, hasn't it? And that first 5 minutes, like you say, when we launched at 7 p.m. on the Monday, and those numbers just went up, and those VHS boxes all got sold out immediately. Mike, how was were you expecting that to happen? Anything like that?
Well, I was planning on going to the gym that night, just to so I wasn't like sat in front of the computer for ages refreshing it. But when I first saw just how quickly the numbers were going up, it just completely scarpered my plans. And I really promised myself I wasn't going to check it too often or anything like that, but I'm only human.
I can be your story. It was my wedding anniversary, so I had to get special dispensation to invite a third party to the celebrations. I was like, just for the first hour or so.
Yeah. I'm going to be refreshing my phone quite a lot. I hope that's okay. Yeah. It has been. It's been amazing. It's been kind of addictive. I don't think, listeners who have backed us, thank you to everyone who has so far, and apologies for people who missed out on those deluxe sets. We are going to try and release more as we can. Again, like Mike, everyone wants that sweet VHS artwork that you designed. Again, like I was not expecting those to go so fast.
I just, we put these things in place and we made them quite limited because I guess we had confidence in it. I felt very good about everything, but again, my expectations have just been smashed by just how much people have just connected and just loved what we've put together as well. And I suppose, for the Monster Tiers, it's going to be so much fun getting to draw a bunch of people. And some people that I know,
that's cool
as well. That's going to be a lot of fun as well.
Is it? That's nice.
Amazing.
Because again, you're right. That top tier, the one where you get to actually feature on a personalised card, that one went immediately, right, as well. So the 10 people that managed to get that, they were very lucky, actually. They got in there before quite a lot of other people, so that's really cool. So Mike will be asking you for photos of yourselves at some point down the line so that Mike can turn you into an incredible character. So we are going to be talking a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about Final Cut as we go tonight, but mainly we're going to be talking about horror board games generally, because Alex, I feel like this is one of the first things that I remember saying to you when we came up with ideas for Final Cut, is that I was like, I think the Venn diagram between sort of horror fans and EOH listeners in general and kind of board game fans, like I feel as though there is quite a lot of crossover, isn't there? And Alex, you yourself, right, you've been a gamer from way back, right?
I'm slap bang in the middle of that Venn diagram. But you're right. I think when you start to connect with people in the community, in all the great community spaces that have been set up to discuss the podcast and meet people, you sort of like mostly talk about horror, but then you find out other things about people as well. And it's never too long before I start mentioning board games because I'm extremely boring that way. And borderline obsessive at this point. And so I think you're right. And I don't know whether it's the EOH listeners in particular or whether it's horror fans or whatever else it is. But there's a really interesting crossover there. And I've got a bit of I was thinking about it today because I knew we were going to record this. And I was wondering whether there's a sort of empathy link. Like we often talk about horror fans being some of the most empathetic. We know we are. People from the outside always think we're like in the black t-shirts with the like, whatever else. And actually, my experience is like the vast majority of people I've met from because of this podcast are just some of the kindest, sweetest, most empathetic people I've ever been lucky enough to meet. And so I was thinking about that. And then I was thinking about board games is like, it's the ultimate experiment in empathy because it's role play, essentially. Like you're putting yourself into it and you're allowing yourself to feel the things that the character you're playing in this game, essentially, which is probably a version of you. And thinking about how other people are playing in the game as well. And so it's a crackpot theory. But I thought of it today and I thought it was worth bringing up.
I like it.
I like that. Yeah, Mike, what are your thoughts on that? What for you is the appeal of kind of board games and the whole world of gaming generally, do you think?
I mean, for me, I started to get really into tabletop gaming and board games and card games over the lockdowns. And it's interesting that like everyone in horror, especially in through this Kickstarter, everyone's just so keen on the VHS tape, deluxe box set because it's like tactile, it's like analog, and I got really into board games because of that. Traditionally, I've really liked like video games as well, but I just got so sick and tired of sort of living my life through like a screen. That when a group of us started to play Catan specifically, that's been kind of my first gateway. Because the thing is, like when I was younger, I played things like Monopoly and like Trivial Pursuit and stuff. And basically, I just got it was like an opportunity just to show off how dumb I was a lot of the time. But so many of the games I've played now, there's so many different ways to win as well. And also like I've got a couple of a few like specific horror games that I really like. There's a game that my wife and I really love playing together, which we'll talk about a bit later. But I don't know, I think everyone gets quite excited about some of these like more fun games that get played and like that sort of nerdiness comes out. And I think people in like when I've been to kind of like horror movie festivals and things like that, everyone has that same energy. We're just geeks. We're just big nerds.
Yeah.
Basically.
And I think you're right. You're both right. Like Alex, I think you're absolutely right about like creating something that you can become a bit immersed in. I agree with that. And also absolutely agree, Mike, with what you said about the tactility. Like I think I am a big fan of anything physical. Like I'm sitting here right now with like loads of all my physical media behind me. I love like vinyls rather than just a Spotify play. Like I love anything that I can kind of hold in my hands as well. And that's the one thing about being a podcaster is that you don't create anything that you can hold in your hands. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like Alex, I think there is something to that, isn't there, about the fact that so many people were so keen, particularly on that VHS box version of the game, because there is something about that physical side that appeals to horror fans, it feels like.
And I'm so glad Mike mentioned that because the physicality of the board game is high on the list of reasons why I like it as well. Like the components of a board game are so important to me, whether it's little wooden meeples or bits of like plastic or, cardstock. Oh God, the amount of conversations we had about cardstock, right? And
the amount of times I've said 5mm or like MGS or whatever, like
GSM
of I mean, I still don't fucking know, even though I've been through it a million times in the last 2 years. But yes, all of that requires a lot of thought. Yeah, and
just the way that even just something as simple as like holding a dice, that, and then rolling a dice, throwing a dice, or the sound of a dice if you're in a shaker, like that kind of thing. It just connects you to a physical space, a place and a time, and often a communal experience that you're sharing with other people all of those things are reasons why I love board games. Although there are some great board games that require absolutely, quote unquote board games that require, nothing. Like there's a game called Love Letter. It's 14 cards. Oh, it's brilliant. I love it. It's one of my favorite games.
And ones like that,
cards.
actually, that's true, because sometimes when a game has so much stuff, I get a bit overwhelmed. I'm like, what's this thing for now? And stuff, like it's nice when you've got something that is kind of simple and high concept, but that works.
You want to strike a balance, you want something that's as beautiful to look at and as fun and engaging, but as simple as like Ticket to Ride. That's the classic. All the little trains. Yeah, all the little trains going across Europe. Just love it.
I absolutely love Ticket to Ride. I'm a bit of a maps geek too, I think. Like I'm going on a month-long trip to the US next month. And honestly, I had the most fun. I reckon I would have had as much fun just planning the routes around Google Maps than actually going on the holiday. I absolutely love it. So Ticket to Ride very much ticks my boxes. Let's talk about how do you remember kind of, have you always been into games, and do you remember what games you kind of loved as a kid? Like Mike, do you remember what were some of your favourite board games when you were growing up?
Thing is, my favourite board game, I only ever got to play it once at a friend's house, and that was Mousetrap. Oh. And you want to talk about, just bits and the tactility.
Yeah, tactile.
Like, oh my God, you can trap the fucking mouse in the trap, and it does this and it does that. It reminded me a bit of I can't remember the specific name of it, but those amazing contraptions people design, and it's like a ball will just kind of go into a thing and another thing and another thing and another thing.
Incredible.
It was that kind of that magic,
like those OK Go music videos and that kind of thing. Like those amazing kind of things. Yeah,
and I don't ever want to play Mousetrap actually, because it will never live up.
Can I let you in on a secret? Mousetrap isn't a very good game.
Right.
No, I was just about to say, no one really plays the actual game, do they?
With Mousetrap. It's an amazing television advert.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what made you want to play it. Yes. And actually, you've had the perfect Mousetrap experience, which is where you've played it once, you've seen it, you've participated. Yeah. And then you're absolutely right. Never try and play it again. Never think about playing it again.
It never actually runs as smoothly as you think as well. Like you've got to nudge bits along and things go wrong. And if you lose a bit of it, that's it kind of thing. Like it's a bit of a nightmare, but I completely agree with you. I was so excited by that game as a kid. Yeah. Alex, what about you? Do you remember any of your childhood favourite games?
So, yes, I'll try and keep it brief. But, I think for me, when I was younger, like my first ever kind of, I guess, franchise stuff was all Star Wars and spacey type things. But for board games, like the generic board game is like kind of fantasy, right? It's sort of Dungeons and Dragons adjacent. It's sword and sorcery, whatever else. So I remember spending a huge amount of my childhood playing a game called Hero Quest. You guys might be a bit too young for it. But it was like a sort of Dungeons and Dragons, except it had an actual board, but the board was sort of modular, and you had a little book of quests, and it would tell you like where to put the doors, where to put the monsters, and then you could go through each thing individually. And they just re-skinned it and re-released it a few years ago, so you can play it again now, but I haven't invested in it because it's like 120 quid, and I'm like, and it's a massive box. I'm not sure I've got space for it, but maybe. So yeah, things like Hero Quest. I remember another game that I used to love because it had, again, it probably wasn't that good of a game, but it had just the best mechanic. It was called Key to the Kingdom, and it was a board, and then when you hit a certain space, the board would fold out and double in size, and there'd be you'd go through a portal and go to a different thing. And so it was things like that when people start to use the medium of the board that I really liked, and loads of different, and you start to learn different mechanics like bidding mechanics or luck of the draw, drafting, all that kind of stuff. I remember a game called Elixir. So loads of games, and then you start playing games like Monopoly, like someone mentioned it already. I think it's an example of the worst board game. I hate it.
Really? That's interesting. I mean,
I hate Monopoly.
It's renowned for being you know, if we're talking horror, right? It's a truly horrific experience sitting down to play. I used to play it quite a lot with my family, but I don't remember ever finishing a game of Monopoly.
Never.
Like, it's almost impossible to get to the end of, isn't it?
It's broken. It's broken to mechanic. And also, like, I used to play against my sister, and I sort of respect the hustle. But she would do this thing where she'd land on my hotel, and I'd be like, "Yes, I finally won!" And then she'd like pull open her jumper, and all of this like money would fall out. She hadn't stolen it. She'd just been like hiding it for a rainy day.
Amazing.
And then she'd like all of a sudden pull it out. And then when I knew she was going to do it, I'd be watching her like a hawk the whole time. And then still she would manage to have squirreled some away. And I would have thought I'd won, and she hadn't, and she'd stopped me. So
it is notoriously the game that ends up in falling outs and all sorts, doesn't it? That's the thing. It is, yeah. I came from a big game loving family. Like, it was one of the things I first said to Rihanna when we got together. I was like, before she visited my family for the first time, I was like, it's a good thing you're into games, because you kind of have to be if you're going to join my family. Like, it's all we do at Christmas and that kind of thing. Like, massive card players. Like, I always played cards a lot as a kid. But board games as well. Yeah, I used to love, Mousetrap I had all of the classic like MB ones, like Kaplunk.
Game of Life.
Yeah.
Buckaroo.
Kaplunk was a nightmare, though. It took about half an hour to set up, and then it wasn't actually that fun when you played it. But my favourite, maybe this is quite telling, because my favourite actually out of all of those kind of classic games was Cluedo. I loved the murder element, the mystery element, the creeping around from room to room in the house. Like, that was one that I was kind of obsessed with as a kid as well, which, you know, I guess we could sort of say, Alex, is like almost horror adjacent, right? Cluedo?
I'd say so. Yeah. I mean, you're famous for making anything horror, but like it's sort of Agatha Christie, Hitchcock, like, it's close enough.
Exactly. I'd say so. You've got knives and, well, daggers and ropes and revolvers,
whatever the hell a lead piping was for,
whatever that was. Exactly. You know. So yeah, always loved it. And also, I had older sisters, and they had the infamous Ghost Castle game as well, which like I know everyone remembers so fondly. Like, we're going to read listener comments in a bit, but so many people mentioned that one. Mike, did you ever have Ghost Castle as a kid?
No, I never did. This is the my board game education when I was younger was so basic. It was Monopoly. I didn't even get Cluedo. Cluedo was another advert which I loved, and I think I've played Cluedo once or twice. It's very disappointing. It's fun.
Oh, Cluedo's! I quite like Cluedo. Cluedo's a good game.
Fine,
it's all right, but it's a bit longer and more drawn out than you think it's going to be.
And it's not as good as the movie.
No.
Eventually, there you go. Eventually, when your kid grows up, there's a great version of Junior Cluedo. It's a really good junior version.
Sold.
I tell you what is a banger. Was a banger when I was a kid, is still a banger to this day. Guess Who? I mean, you can't go wrong with Guess Who, right?
Oh, my favorite way to play Guess Who, we call it existential Guess Who.
Yes.
And you're not allowed to use any physical attributes.
I love it.
Was this person bullied at school?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Does this person look like he would enjoy horror movies or something? Like, this is exactly how we now play.
Did this person vote for Brexit?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about, like, we've done the kind of mainstream games, but let's get into the horror stuff, shall we? And we're going to talk about some of our personal favorites. We're gonna split it into categories, and then we're going to read some listeners and patrons' comments as well, and we can sort of talk through them. Alex, you kindly kind of separated them into categories for me. As ever, you've designed a playlist for this discussion, which I love.
Gave me some homework.
Yeah, you gave me some homework. Exactly. I love it. So organised. So I thought, well, I've already mentioned games like Cluedo and Ghost Castle. Maybe we should talk about the kind of, I guess, what we'd call entry-level kids, like horror board games, right? There are a few others that we haven't yet mentioned, like ATMOSFEAR, of course, right?
Iconic.
Oh my God, absolutely iconic. Maybe the most iconic horror board game of all, I would argue. But Mike, have you ever had the pleasure of playing Atmosphere?
No, but when you posted about it in the chat, I had a look at it. It looks absolutely amazing, and I feel quite wistful hearing you guys talk about these amazing ones, because I'm late to the game myself.
Well, depending on how many copies of Final Cut we sell, we might all have to hang out for a while. To start packing them together, so maybe we'll need some sort of distraction.
And actually, I've done this already for Patreon. About 4 years ago, I got together with two friends and I filmed us playing Atmosphere and posted it on there. But we should do it again.
Yeah, there are 3 sequels.
Yeah,
there's Atmosphere 2, Atmosphere 3, and Atmosphere 4, all of which I've got on VHS. And there's a whole sequel game called Atmosphere: The Harbingers, which is a complete reinterpretation as well. So there's
incredible.
All sorts.
And yes, I've got the games with the VHS, but obviously now you can watch all the videos on YouTube.
Watch it on YouTube.
So it's perfect. It works really well. How do we describe Atmosphere, Alex, for people that don't know anything about this game?
So Atmosphere was the most 90s thing of all time. So it came the game comes with a VHS, and you start the VHS. And the thing I love about Atmosphere is that it is a hard 60 minutes or less.
Yes.
And that's exactly how long the game is going to take. There's very few rules you need to know in advance because you're going to learn them as you go through. So it's really entry level. The amount of times I played it with people who are not into games and came over, like the best sleepover game ever, right? You just get Atmosphere out. Yeah. So you start the video, and there's this guy called the Gatekeeper. I think he's called the Gatekeeper. It's been a while since I played it. Yeah. Yes. And you're sort of moving around a board trying to get keys or some kind of thing, and then every so often there's a clock. Before 24 made it cool, there's a clock on the screen and there's like spooky music going on. And every so often he will just appear out of nowhere and shout, usually shouting the word maggot.
Never ever come closer to me again, you maggot! All of you will now take a turn to roll the dice, and the one who rolls the highest is the chosen one. Remember, for when I call for the chosen one, it will answer, or it will pay dearly.
And then he'll get you to do things like whoever's turn it is might have to do a forfeit of some description, go back or give something up, or they might have to point out someone. And yeah, you're all going around and around. And eventually you've got to try and get to the middle and draw a card. And if the card that you draw has got your nightmare on it, then you haven't won yet. You have to keep going. And so you keep going around and around.
It's one of those games, I would argue, perhaps controversially, that is a little bit like Mousetrap, where I think the gimmick of it was more fun than the actual board game. Is that fair to say, Alex? Like, I always remember the putting in the VHS and having the guy talk to you was the best part. The actual rolling the dice and moving around the board.
Oh, the game itself is not. No, the fun is when he picks one of you, like he picks on like the youngest or the shortest or whatever else, and then victimizes them for the whole hour. Like
it's so good as well, Mike. It's because there's
like being in the front row of like a stand-up gig.
My other favorite thing is that he talks to you and like acts like he's listening to you. So he'll be like, "You, the younger one, what's your name?" And then he leaves a little pause, and then he goes, "That's a stupid name," and stuff. And like it's supposed to be like you're having a little conversation with him. It's incredible. So good.
Pick up the dice. Now! Roll it! What number did you roll? Huh? Not bad. Roll it again.
Yeah, it's an absolute banger, isn't it? So that is like, I think, again, like an absolute all-timer in terms of kids' horror board games, isn't it? But they kind of go way back. Like, I guess one of the earliest and most classic kind of examples is a Ouija board as well, right? Which I sort of never realised, growing up, that this Ouija board is actually a game, right? It's actually like a kid's sort of parlor game type thing. Is that right?
It's definitely licensed to like Hasbro or MB or someone. Like someone owns the rights to Ouija as a thing.
That's mad, isn't it? Because so many people you speak to are like, oh, I would never mess with a Ouija board. But it's like, well, it's like messing with Guess Who. I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine. Mike, have you ever done a Ouija board?
Never, and I never will. I'm too. I don't know. I'm too. I just think the universe has it in for me, and the second I open up one of those things, it's going to let me have it. It's funny, actually. Yeah, in terms of like the advertising, I've got these old horror comic books from kind of like the 50s and 60s, and in the back are adverts for Ouija boards. And it's sort of, it's funny, isn't it? It's like I think about Ouija boards as like, to do with like the occult and actually kind of like black magic of sorts. But actually, it's a toy for children.
So
well, I think
weird.
that let's not go off topic, but it's definitely the Satanic Panic has got a lot to answer for.
Sure.
On this front.
Yeah.
I remember my mum making me promise, like it was the one thing I was never allowed to do was a Ouija board.
Well, and that's not entirely off topic, is it? Because, look at Dungeons and Dragons. Look at some of the most famous kind of horror board games. They did come under fire, didn't they, as being evil or corrupting the kid. I guess this was like before kids had video games. Board games were the things that were rotting our brains and our souls, right?
How dare you let children have an imagination of their own? They must believe our doctrines. They cannot be free thinkers.
I love it. And people like Aleister Crowley would used the Ouija board for his stuff. So it became, like you say, Mike, kind of linked in with black magic and all of that kind of thing. But how does it... I don't really understand how it works for kids. Is it just that you pretend to talk to spirits or something as like a make-believe game? Is it something like that? Like, I don't really get how it's a game.
Like I say, I've never done it because my mum made me promise. And so... Here we are.
Well, now that would be good video content.
There you go.
Say
me and my mum doing a Ouija board.
No, us three doing a Ouija board. Although I've got a feeling Mike might not be.
No way.
He's shaking his head.
It's not even. Do you know what it is? It's not even that I have any kind of like strong beliefs about ghosts or anything like that, or the beyond. I just know I will not be able to fucking relax.
Yeah.
Just the minuscule percentage that there could be something.
I know.
I would just be in like whatever sleep I got after that would be ruined, and I can't ruin my sleep more than it has been.
You don't. It's that is absolutely not worth the risk. You're absolutely right.
Well, Mike, I'm up for it. We can do it.
I'm up for it. I sort of want to. It's kind of fascinating in terms of the group psychology of who's moving the thing and who feels like they're moving it when they're actually not, or vice versa, or like that. It's kind of interesting to me, But anyway, let's talk about. Are there any other, Alex, as our kind of game expert? Are there any other kind of games in this category you want to shout out or recommend?
Well, I think the interesting thing as well is that you talked about it as gateway, like it's gateway gaming, but it's gateway horror as well. And so there's, for example, there's a couple of cooperative games I've played with my kids, like legacy games. So a legacy game is a game that gets different as you play it. The more games you play, like you get new rules or you put stickers on things and the gameplay changes as you go along. And there's a couple of games, I know, because I feel like I'm on a Brad Also Ran episode now where hopefully people are going to be writing down things if any of them appeal to them. But there's a couple of games called Zombie Kids and Zombie Teens, the sequel, and they are with a Z. And they're basically like if George A. Romero had done Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead, but in a high school. And so you're a whole load of high schoolers trying to, and your teachers have turned to zombies, and there's like one kid on a bike, and he's got a special move where he can go 2 places instead of 1, and things like that. So there's, and it's just really fun. But also it's like it's interesting how zombies are not terrifying in that. They're not scary.
Zombies are kind of gateway game monsters, aren't they? Sure. I had 2 nephews that were both, when they were really young, their first kind of they first became aware of zombies because of the games Plants vs. Zombies.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Like, zombies are kind of out there in kids' pop culture, aren't they? Quite heavily, yeah. Yeah, they can be cute, can't they? Maybe that's why a lot of us horror fans have turned our backs on zombies slightly.
Maybe.
I don't know, maybe that's what it is. Anything else, Alex, you want to call out, or should we move on to our next category?
I think we can move on. I mean, the other thing I'll say is, like, there are a million great board games out there. And so this is not going to be an exhaustive list. This is just things that I know about or have played.
Exactly. And that was a smaller category because we were talking specifically about kids, very specifically aimed at kids games there for that, but there are so many more. And actually, we should talk a little bit, because we love to talk about subgenres, I suppose, on this podcast. You've mentioned zombies. Like, are there particular subgenres, Alex, that games do kind of lean into?
Yeah, zombies is definitely one of them, actually. And there are a huge number of zombie or zombie adjacent games. And I feel like, you know, like zombies themselves, they come in and out of the zeitgeist, and you think that the zombie craze is over, and then you get The Last of Us. You know, well, is it a zombie or not? I don't know, but like it's that kind of
zombie.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so that if you want to play Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead or whatever else, there is a game called Zombies, 3 exclamation marks, and you can battle against a horde of zombies, basically. And it's, again, it's cooperative, and the zombies like just move themselves. There's like a kind of mechanic for moving them. And then one of the sequel games is set in a mall. And so you can, like, you're laying down tiles, and it's like you're in Dawn of the Dead. But yeah, zombies, they're very accessible. Everyone knows what a zombie is. Everyone understands the zombies. Everyone knows what they're after. Everyone knows about that post-apocalyptic vibe. And so I think they're quite an easy theme thematically for people to get behind.
For sure. I know that, like, Mike doesn't, like, it feels like from my little knowledge, Lovecraft and kind of cosmic horror comes into a lot of kind of games, board games and that kind of thing. Are you sort of very aware of those types of games?
I'm in love with a lot of the artwork for those games, but so this is going to be, I'm embarrassed to admit this. I was actually talking to myself before the podcast. It's like, it's fine to have not played as many horror board games as Alex.
It is fine.
It's fine. Believe me, it's absolutely fine.
But no, the sort of, was it Arkham? The sort of Lovecraftian games I've seen, and there's so many different types of. I think I've seen some that look a little bit like Warhammer, even in terms of the mechanics. But I think my understanding is that a lot of them follow more Dungeons and Dragon rules. Some of those, and they're a bit more kind of story driven. And I've talked to some friends about it, and it sounds like it takes like you need to book in a lot of time to play some of these games.
You're right, like the Arkham Asylum type, or not, the way that's Batman. No, the Arkham Horror and the Lovecraftian, Eldritchian stuff is actually like a huge subgenre as well. And the thing I love about that is that they've turned this mechanic, tracking your sanity as a mechanic. Becomes like you've got to, like, are you still sane? Because the things that you're seeing are driving you slowly mad. And you're, again, sometimes working together or against each other, or sometimes like there's a hidden traitor or a cultist or whatever else. And there's a few games that I know are rated really, really highly. And one of them is this thing called an LCG, a living card game. And you basically get a base card game set, and then you can buy additional, like, cases and additional adventures to go through. And then you can sort of, your hero might make it through a few and then get buffed and then make it to another adventure, or they might go insane and then they turn up later. And so the deck is sort of stacked in a certain way, and there's it's quite story driven, or you're just rolling loads of dice and seeing if you've gone mad. And Cthulhu it is constantly popping up in things, skinning things is
amazing.
That's the other thing, actually, that thematically, if we're talking about themes, is you can take other games and then put a horror skin on them. So a game like Flux or something, you can then have Cthulhu Flux, which is then essentially the same game, but it's just got lots of tentacly things, And
so, Alex, what would you would this classify as the same as something like Dungeons and Dragons? Then these games, like what would you call them? Like role play games or something?
No, so role play games would be a whole separate section that I'd include Dungeons and Dragons in, but then Dungeons and Dragons is just one set of rules. There's all sorts of different types of rule sets for role-playing games that you can do. So this is more, I guess you're using your imagination more because it's less of a board game with miniatures that you're moving around and more just like cards that are being dealt that then you have to, pull in your imagination to figure out like what's happening and bring the thematics yourself. But like I always find the games get more exciting if you bring an element of character and story into them. Even if you're just doing trains, you're doing Ticket to Ride. You got to think about what kind of train guy am I going to be, and am I going to be mean or am I going to be kind, or where are my tickets taking me, and what does that mean? Like you can always add more personality in. If you've got your little meeples in Catan, you're like, oh, okay, who's the robber? Like who's going to be? Am I going to build an army? Am I all of that? So the more character that you can bring in, the better, in my opinion.
I've always been quite intimidated by Dungeons and Dragons and those sorts of games. Like, are you a big fan of them, Alex? Like, how easy are they to kind of learn and get into?
Well, ask me again in 7 days when I will have done my first ever Dungeons and Dragons campaign.
Oh, so you're not, at this point in your life, at least, a big Dungeons and Dragons guy?
No, sort of like I'm a, fantasy adjacent. I watched the cartoon as a kid. I thought the film that came out last year was great, but I've never actually played the game. And so I'm playing my first D&D campaign. And I've got my character, so it's one of the starter ones. So you just do a whole load of admin at the beginning. You're sort of given a character. I'm a wood elf fighter.
Great.
With a folk hero background. I've got a +2 buff with a bow and arrow, but I've also got a great sword. And I've started to make up a backstory for him. He's got green eyes, copper skin, brown hair, starting to do all of those things. So,
love that.
We'll see how we get on. And then other people are doing the same. And so we're going to meet up. I think it's a campaign that lasts 4 sessions. So it's just a little taster. It's not one of the mega ones.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I think that's sort of like the purest form of this kind of game where everything is just in your head. And sometimes you might have little markers on the table to track things, but it's really, you get out of it what you bring to it. But I don't think you have to wait for an RPG to do that. You don't have to wait for the nerdiest thing. No. You can do that in any of the other types of games that you're playing, where you can bring a little bit of personality and character and bants and sass and whatever.
What about, you've got another category here, Alex, cooperative and kind of semi-cooperative games.
Yeah.
A couple of these I've actually played. Horrified is quite a popular one, isn't it, among horror fans, which is like the Universal Monsters kind of classic. You get to, play with Frankenstein, the creature from the Black Lagoon, and Dracula and all those kind of things. But yeah, the point of that game is you have to work together, right, Alex? I can't quite remember the rules now of Horrified, but you work together to kind of complete the game.
Yes, with Horrified, that you have 2, sometimes 3 monsters if you're playing it extra hard, I think. And each of the different monsters has a different win condition, and so you have to play in a slightly different way. So I think for Dracula, you have to discover all of the coffins of earth that he's buried around the town and destroy them, or something like that. And so, you've got Frankenstein and the bride, and they're trying to meet up, and you've got to try and stop them meeting. And so there's different things that you can do, and it's what I like about those sorts of games is when it's a little bit asymmetric, or it's a little bit like every game plays differently when you have different monsters that can do different things and have different power sets. And this is kind of what I tried to do with some of the cards in Final Cut, actually, was like when you can make the action of the turn thematically relevant to the monster or the creature or the card sort of artwork or the card name, that could just add so much more. So one of the other things that's on this sort of cooperative games is a game called Betrayal at House on the Hill, which again I think we should play. That might make a really good Patreon episode actually. So it's essentially Scooby-Doo. So Amazing. You're all a bunch of people. Like, why are you friends? Like, why? There's like a little girl, and there's a mad scientist, and there's a jock, and there's all these different people. So you already play as one of those characters, and you go to this abandoned house on the hill, and it's a modular board. So you're sort of laying rooms out as you explore them, and each time you go into the room, you roll some dice, and you're at the beginning, you're all trying to like get your health and your stamina and your sanity up, and then at some point something will happen in one of the rooms, and then it's like all the doors basically lock, and you figure out that you've been betrayed by one of your party, and so one of you is a wrong 'un and has led everybody else here to their doom. But the thing is that you don't know that until that happens, and then you find out that you're the traitor, and then you get a separate rule book from everybody else, and then you go off, and then you've got your own secret objectives as the traitor, and then everybody else has got to try and figure out what those are and stop you. And so again, there's 50 different scenarios in the book, and so each time you play, it's completely different. And it could be you could be a vampire, and you've got to try and turn everybody else in the group into a vampire, or you could be a ghost and you've got to try and escape out of one specific room, but they've got to try and stop you getting there. Or there's all sorts of different things that happen in that, and that's a really fun game that calls on a lot of like horror lore, and also allows you to have a bit of character and some fun as you're doing it. I'd love to play that with you guys.
That sounds great.
That sounds so good. Yeah, I would absolutely love to play that.
Anything like that, any of those kind of like traitors, werewolf, Among Us type games, I'm so into. Absolutely.
Well, there's a subsection of this cooperative that's called semi-cooperative. So that's like, and talking about zombies, it all comes full circle. There's a really famous game called Dead of Winter, which was actually the last game I played before the pandemic in person. The last game I played in person before the pandemic, and essentially you're playing. It's a bit like The Walking Dead. You're in like a bunker. And you don't have enough stuff, and so you've got to go out and find things, and then zombies are trying to break through here, and you've got to try and like decide who you want to sacrifice, that kind of thing. And so you only win the game if you all as a team win and you complete your own personal objective. And your personal objective might be something really horrible, like one person has to starve to death, or you have to do something bad as well. So you can only win if your personal objective is met as well as your group objective. And so then people aren't trusting each other, blah, blah, blah.
Amazing. Love this.
Actually, Mike, now is not the time, because this is not a horror podcast. This is not a horror game, but a game I would love to play with you is Battlestar Galactica, the board game. Have you ever heard of it?
Oh, please. Oh, I have absolutely heard of it. And isn't it a similar kind of thing?
It's the same thing.
Got like secret Cylons, basically, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so into it. I was on the Journey Through Sci-Fi podcast the other day with Matt and James, and they were talking, or Matt's a huge Dune fan, and he was saying that the Dune board game is amazing.
I've heard
it's as well.
Incredible.
Yeah, you're going around like finding spice and then avoiding worms and all that kind of shit. Love it. And we'll get onto this in a minute, actually, maybe like famous IP games. But anything else? I mean, you mentioned the last game you played there before the pandemic, Alex. What about the game Pandemic?
Yeah.
It's also one of these, right?
I mean, that could be classed as a horror at this point, right?
Yes.
Me and my friends started a Pandemic Legacy campaign before the pandemic.
No!
It's your fault.
And we played it during whenever we were able to meet up again. And what was the most horrible thing about it is like there was in a Pandemic Legacy, there's like zombies. There's like a sort of a zombie
spoilers
outbreak at one point.
God.
And I think we only ever got up to July, in it. It was
So how does it work, Mike? How does Pandemic work?
Alex, tell me if I'm wrong. I think it might be similar to Risk.
Risk Legacy was one of the first legacy games. So Pandemic's a cooperative game where you work for the CDC and you're trying to like stop viruses, right?
Yes.
And then in Pandemic Legacy, what happens is like one city gets overrun and you just put a big red cross over it and you can never go there again. So it's the board. You're basically playing like 12 games or 24 games, and then the game is done. You can't play it anymore. But like as you're going along, like certain routes get crossed out, cities get crossed out. You might get bonus powers. You might die and have to be replaced.
It's really stressful playing a game where you know that like if you don't get, because you get to do a do-over if you fail a month, and you can kind of like get a little bit of like a pick-me-up. But if you fail that month twice, that's it. And you've like lost certain characters, and like Madrid is gone. It's really horrible. It's really horrid.
That's a really helpful hub.
Yeah, it's oh my god, it's so bad. I think we tanked. I think we tanked Singapore. We tanked Singapore, and that was devastating.
Yikes. So I think Pandemic Legacy reminds me of like World War Z or something. Like that's the closest kind of analogy for me.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. Well, let's talk about some famous kind of IP spin-off games. And I always used to be a bit skeptical about these. Like at first glance, I would often think, oh, these games are probably like cash grabs and they're probably not actually very good games. But some of them I've heard are incredible, right? Alex, do you have any particular favorites in terms of films in terms of games that are actually kind of based on films?
I think the good rule of thumb is like if it comes out at the same time as the film, it's probably bad.
Yeah,
if it comes out
because it's promotional.
Yeah, if it comes out 20 years later, it's because someone loves it and cares about it and wants to do a good thing by it. And so, actually, quite a lot of these I've not played. I know the world of Ridley Scott's Alien and James Cameron's Aliens and that whatever the Xenoverse. I don't know what we call it. What do we call the Alien universe? That thing.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. The Xenoverse. Sure.
That is a very rich game, and again, there's like kids versions, there's like lo-fi versions, and then there's really full-on like scary I'm being hunted by an alien games. There's things where it simulates like how much noise you've made walking down a corridor. There's things where like you've only got a certain amount of light, and so like things are disappearing behind you. So there's loads of good alien games out there. I've also heard that The Shining is a good game. The Thing has got a couple.
I've heard The Thing is great.
A couple of really good interpretations, because again, it's that social deduction. Like, who's a thing? You know, who is
exactly that just works perfectly, doesn't it? It's the whodunit type games in a way, I suppose.
Apparently, the Jaws game is good. I've heard. I haven't played that either.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I am dying to play The Shining one. I mean, Mike, The Shining is your fave of all time, right? Like, have you ever played or been tempted to play the game?
It is my favourite film ever, and I just cannot even wrap my head around how you'd begin the mechanics.
No! What would this game be? Like, what? Try and figure out who staged the moon landing?
Yeah.
What's going on?
I don't really want to chase Danny. Thanks.
So it's a co-op game. Collectively, you will win if you all survive. A game of survival and suspense. It looks fun.
And again, you know, the package, I mean, because it's The Shining, right? So it looks beautiful, like the packaging, the actual game and the bits. It looks really sexy. I'm like, yeah, I really want to buy that at some point. But yeah, I've heard good things that the actual gameplay is good too. Yeah. Anything else worth mentioning before we go on to any other like comments from listeners and that kind of thing? Anything else we've missed, Alex, so far?
I mean, the other thing I would say, like, I am a huge fan. We've talked about social deduction and we've talked about board games, and I think it's really important to say, like, I have the same way that you have a broad church when it comes to horror, I have a very broad church when it comes to like quote unquote board games. You don't even need a board. So one of the games I love the most is a game called Werewolf. Some people play it as Mafia, and all you need is just some cards. I've improvised it with bits of paper. I've improvised it with like different coloured Lego bricks, like whatever you've got to hand. I've played it at work. I've played it with friends, and it's basically like The Traitors. If you've watched that TV show, it's some of you are hidden werewolves and you're trying to kill other people, and again, it gives such an opportunity for storytelling, for you to lie to each other's faces. Once again, not that I'm trying to pitch a whole load of extra Patreon episodes. I think that could be really fun with a whole load of, maybe actually that's better. Maybe that's better on a live, actually in a live setting, everyone up on stage. I love narrating a werewolf game. That's my favourite thing to do.
We could do it as a live show. Should we set this as a stretch goal? If we reach like 1,000, if we reach 1,000 backers, we'll do a live stage werewolf.
Becky and Stevie and Brad, Josh, everybody going for each other. All of them. Josh will get very cross with the whole thing. Absolutely.
It'll be great.
I'm here for it.
Love seeing people be real pieces of shit playing werewolf. I absolutely love it.
It brings out the worst in people, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a delicious game. It's like whenever I don't like for instance, it's like for me it's like the anti-Monopoly, where when someone's being a dick playing Monopoly, I fucking hate them. But when someone's being an asshole playing werewolf, I love it.
Absolutely agree.
Well, there is just something about that type of game, isn't there? I mean, it's the reason why The Traitors is like the biggest show in the world right now as well, and it's so bloody addictive to watch as well. Love anything like that. I actually got given by somebody for Christmas the Traitors game. I haven't played it yet. Have you played it yet?
No.
It's just a deck of cards, I think. So I'm assuming it's just werewolf, right? But
I'm sure. I think the thing I don't know how they've done it, but I think they've innovated it where you don't need as many people. Because like if you want to play a good werewolf game, you need like 7 people properly.
You need, and I would have thought it'd be the same for The Traitors, right? But it's all about that kind of round table.
They've found a way to do it with 3 or 4 people somehow. I don't know how. I haven't tried it.
Amazing.
I've got Werewolf Legacy in this enormous. I don't understand why it's such a bloody big box. Actually, can't really make heads or tails of it. But I need 9 people to play it with. I've never played it. I've never ever played it, but maybe one day. I don't know. But I'd love to see what like a supercharged game of werewolf can look like with this thing.
I love this. And you've mentioned this already, Alex, and I know we've discussed this on other chats we've had, but I think this was what was so important to us about Final Cut too, right? Was that there is that kind of storytelling immersive element too, right? Where it's not just you're picking up cards and playing down cards, like you're creating kind of a mythology in your head almost, right, as you're playing it.
Not to get all like psychological and sad about it, but the thing that I love about games as well is as a man who has historically not been so great at connecting with his emotions in social settings, having something to do while you're chatting to people can be a really good lubricant for that kind of conversation. So
absolutely,
some people are really good at getting together and just chatting and spilling their guts and sharing, and good for them. I'm pleased for you. That has never been my experience. Like, what's easier for me is if we're playing a game or we're chatting about a movie or whatever else, and you've got a purpose, you've got a reason to be there other than, hello, I would like to talk to you about the bad feelings I'm having. And so anything that can give you a sense of social cohesion and connection, I think is part of it. And so you're right. Like, what we wanted to do was give people the opportunity to talk about their favorite things, the things they don't like. Like we've always done that when we finished a game of Final Cut and you've got your movie in front of you, you're like, what film is this? Oh yeah. And then it always goes into a conversation. Oh, have you seen that? Oh, do you remember there was that office workers and they're all locked in a big office building, and then like, how does that, there's like, it always makes you, it's a conversation starter, it's a conversation catalyst, it's an accelerant, and I think that's a really important thing about gaming for me, is that sense of community and connection that you get on the side of the game itself. And anybody who's like only about the winning, I know a few gamers and they're only about the winning, and I don't play with them anymore, even if I love beating them, which I really do. It's also just not as much Like I'm not there for the big win all the time.
But they're great to have around because everyone eventually gets sick of them. And then they just never let them win. I've got my friend Gary. Hey, Gary, if you're listening, he always wins. He always wins. And he always wants to. He's a very smart man. And he, relatively Gary, but he's really good at games like Terraforming Mars. And I'm always very impressed with how much he can kind of calculate on the spot. But then what we'll do is, he's smarter than any of us. But he's not smarter than all of us. And we just ruin his games. But it's also incredible when he still wins. It is like, I cannot believe that someone can just like calculate like this. And it's so funny.
I've got a friend like that.
It's mad. It's mad. Well, it's so interesting what you were saying about that kind of like social connection. I'm a serial. I'm terrible for confrontation. Awful. Oh, just like gives me the heebie-jeebies. I feel like I learned like healthy confrontation. And kind of like
that's
butting
such a good
heads
point.
by playing Catan because we were all really close friends, but we'd actually like bark at each other. It was a bit like people describe it as kind of like being a people that work in a kitchen. They're all like kind of like horrid to each other in the moment, but they're all still really good friends afterwards. And it's like there's kind of camaraderie and like things getting a little bit messy. And I don't know. It's like if everyone's enjoying it to some extent, everyone gets a bit heated and passionate. And it's like it was really some of the first experiences I've personally had where it was like I felt comfortable being a bit uncomfortable, I suppose, and kind of getting a bit wound up.
There's your next pitch, right? Your next IP pitch is to reskin Catan, but with the bear.
I think that'd do so well. We've got to leave it 5 years or so, so we're not just in total cash. And
yeah, exactly.
That's good though. I like that. I think you're absolutely right about that. That it is a social lubricant is the best way to put it. Me and Rihanna often find that when we go out with other couples that we maybe like don't know quite as well, or that we're like only know one of them and not the other, we're always like, let's do a pub quiz, because then it gives us something to talk about, throughout the evening. But anything like that, right, is so useful. And I think, going back to that idea of kind of like having a world to immerse yourself in, Mike, that obviously was so important to Final Cut 2 with your illustrations, right? And again, we've spoken about this before, but we went back and forth a lot about, on each individual card, for example, how much space you give to that character, right? Because in some ways that character is less functionally important than all the little symbols and everything else on that card, right? But it also is the most important thing in a way, right? But yeah, was that tricky for you when sort of tackling that in terms of illustrating?
For me, it was really fun for me to figure out like what was like an appropriate level of detail to give each character. And what it really helped me do is sort of let go of needing to kind of like show like too much detail. But like, what was it? Kind of like pick my moments for like gore and stuff like that. And I think that was it. It was, I've become much more interested in composition rather than like clarity or detail of like the image. There's like a lot of kind of like shadows and stuff that I try and use now in my art because of this game. And I think one of the coolest things about it was like, I really just, I think my style's actually simplified a bit since working on this game. But I feel like for me, I feel like there's more of me in the artwork for this game now, which is really, really exciting. And it was just like, I just wanted to kind of like, have a go at kind of, what's my Mars killer? What does this, how do I see this? How do I see this? What do I think works for this? And, I really feel really good about the tone of like the characters in it. There's two of my favorite kind of artists that I drew some inspiration from for like I suppose a lot of my work at the moment is Mike Mignola, who did Hellboy. I'm sure people will probably see some influences there, and I'm going to absolutely butcher the name, but the director of anime films like Ninja Scroll, sort of the art director of that, and other anime like Wicked City and things like that. I think that the illustration style for that is very kind of like shadow based, and it feels much kind of quite a bit more Western than a lot of other anime. And those are two kind of like avenues that I thought of, and I've got a lot of inspiration from the way that they kind of handled certain kind of like lighting styles and things like that. So yeah, I probably over egged my answer there.
No,
but I feel like I could quite happily talk about the sort of like art direction for this all day.
But you can feel every card.
I hope so.
That's what I think. You can. They've got like a real sense of. Oh God, I'm going to trigger Mike at this point, right? Oh, here we go. They're Lynchian.
Yeah.
Like they make you feel something without you necessarily knowing exactly what everything is or is meant to be. Like you get the vibe, right? That's the best way I can describe it. It's like you get the vibe of the card and you get the vibe of what's happening. Even if like I look at some of them, I'm like, I still don't really know what that is, but it's cool. And I get it.
I love that answer actually, because one of the things I sort of allowed myself to do was just, I didn't really plan I didn't do too many sketches of each individual character or anything like that. I just I really like gave myself a lot of time just to kind of draw loads and loads and loads and loads and loads. And I think the people that do get the deluxe box set are going to be very happy with the sort of the sketch work and things like that in there, because that was so much fun. Just like I was really just like riffing on all of the different, I mean, God, I had like 70, like, I just had like 70, a list of like over 70 things. And I was just like...
Yeah, we just gave you a list, didn't we, in a spreadsheet. So it was just like you say, the masked madman, the chainsaw, the puzzle box.
Do you love being briefed via Excel spreadsheets? Is that your favourite medium to be briefed in?
Such an enormous amount that it's so interesting to me that like if I'd have decided to do some of the items, at the end of the week rather than like the beginning of the week, they'd probably look different based on like what my sort of like media diet had been or something like that. And that's how kind of like free form that sort of initial process was. And then what was great is like, I think I'd say a good like 70 or 60 to 70% of what I initially came up with was like really not touched. But there was like that sort of top percent where it's like, okay, this one's maybe a bit samey. Let's try and like, get a bit more kind of like inclusivity here. And, let's make sure that like everything is just like balanced really nicely. And we feel like we're kind of like, getting everyone involved and not being too sort of stereotypical. That's one thing I found is my first pass, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I'm like a straight white guy.
Yeah,
I was really embarrassed.
It's fine. We all had to reckon with that, didn't we? It's fine. But we took steps. We took steps to change and evolve some of those things as they went, right?
But the only way you can do that is by being intentional about it.
Yeah,
and I think I'm proud of us for doing it, and I'm very thankful to some of the voices and people that gave us some great advice and tips and checked us along the way.
Absolutely. Well, there you go. Well, we should finish by reading some comments from people about some of their favourite games. Although I suddenly felt like I want to ask you, we talked about like famous IP and movies that have been turned into games. What movie would you like to see turned into a good board game? Because as soon as one of you mentioned Lynchian there, I was like, let's have a Lost Highway board game, please. I would very much like that.
There's no rule book.
There's no rules. No one knows when it begins and when it ends. It's going on right now. I would love it.
You're already playing it.
Everyone changes character midway through, and suddenly all the rules completely change a third of the way in. It could be chaos. I'd love it.
That sounds so annoying.
It does. Alex, what horror movie would you like to see as a game?
Well, it's one of my favourites, one of my favourite horror movies of all time. I think that maybe there's already been one, but I think the Blair Witch Project could make a really incredible game.
It would make such a good game.
I just think you could find little fragments of things, little bits of map. I actually don't want to talk too much about it in case someone has already made it, or in case maybe we want to make.
We should
talk to someone.
Think about that, right? Because
you
could introduce video elements to it, like bits of found footage, artifacts.
The whole thing. You find different tapes, but you don't know what order they're supposed to be played in.
Maybe
so
you could even make it multimedia if you wanted to. So like it gives you a random URL and you find something like almost like a virtual escape room style. You find bits of things online and it's a great idea. That's better than my Lost Highway pitch. I'll give you that. Mike, what about you?
Oh God, I don't know. I can't follow those.
I know.
Fuck it, Videodrome, and it's got like it has all of the those terrible VHS tape characters in it, and you've got to like pause the video and things like that, and you got James Woods.
Oh, you could do some absolutely filthy artwork for that as well.
That's so good. I mean, again, you could literally just repackage Atmosphere, really. But Videodrome, couldn't you?
That's so out there. I am absolutely here for it.
What about Operation? But it's what's the other?
It's like Cronenberg.
It's The Fly. Got to pull off fingernails.
Yes. Oh my god. Like it's like what's the one? Is it Rabid? Like instead of pulling out a bone, you pull out a little like phallic parasite from the armpit and stuff like that.
Oh well, no. What's the one with and the red scrubs?
Dead Ringers.
Dead Ringers. Yeah, so you could have the weird.
It's a gynecology one.
Oh, good.
I'm sorry if you're still listening to this episode.
Someone will buy it.
Yeah, someone will buy it. Oh, I like it. Well, there you go. We've got all the future projects lined up. I can't wait. Let's read through some of these comments quickly before we finish. So Jamie said, not sure if Cluedo counts as horror, but it's the first mega hit board game to take things down a dark direction. Yes, agreed, Jamie. Paddy says Ghost Castle has got to get a mention. And so many people mentioned Ghost Castle. I mentioned it at the very beginning, but we didn't really talk about it, right, Alex? But it was the game, right, where you had the castle with the little skull at the top, right, and it dropped down.
You put it down the chimney, and then it dropped down, and it could fall into one of 4 rooms. And then there's this little staircase. You had to go up and shut the coffin to stop the thing from coming down. And there was a wobbly step halfway up, and sometimes it was good because it combined like the physicality. Like you very rarely get that. Like unless it's a game like Jenga, like the actual physicality of the pieces aren't that important. But Ghost Castle was cool because like it could knock you over as a person, and you could fall down the stairs, and then you'd have to start again.
I think it's quite hard to get hold of now. It's a bit of a collector's item, Ghost Castle, isn't it?
I literally saw it in a museum. If you're in East London, the Young V&A, honestly, it's a brilliant museum for if you've got kids, or even if you haven't. Like it's a museum of play, and they've got a copy of Ghost Castle behind glass, and I was like, exactly where it should be.
I love that. Yeah, Paddy said I never owned it, and I was always so jealous of anyone who did. Yeah, there you go. Now it's like mythic, isn't it? Ghost Castle. Elliot says Alien Fate of the Nostromo board game. And Alex, I think you mentioned this already, right?
I've heard that's good. Yeah, I've heard that's really good.
Love to play that. I bet that is good. Jeff Webber says Final Girl is a great solo game.
I can't believe I didn't mention Final Girl.
Mentioned Final Girl. Now, I know everyone, Alex, you're a big fan. Mike, have you ever played Final Girl?
No, I've not.
No,
but I've heard really good things about it.
It's so cool. So it's modular. You can buy a whole load of settings, and each setting comes with like a killer, and they're sort of like franchise adjacent. Let's put it that way. There's like Maple Lane. It's not Elm Street. It's like Maple Lane, and then there's a camp one, and there's like an Arctic experimenting one. Don't know what that could mean. But yeah, each one comes with a Final Girl and a setting, but then you can mix and match. And it's a completely solo board game. It's a 1-player game. So you play as the Final Girl, and it's only ever 1 player. And then each Final Girl has got different things, and it's got little envelopes. So when you win a game, you get to open the envelope and you get an extra weapon for the next time you play. It's super great. They're just about to do Series 3. And it comes in like cool packaging that's magnetic. It's just a really well-designed game. So
that's really
that'll be on
cool.
Kickstarter soon.
I've got to admit, like I've never really played any solo board games before, like not since I was a kid and I used to play Patience, like with an actual deck of cards rather than solitaire. Alex, I know you're a fan, right? And we've talked about maybe at some point, you know, we're going to release the solo version of Final Cut as well, right?
I'd love to. Yeah. I think, for me, it's like what Mike was saying right at the beginning. It's like the thing I love about board games is getting away from screens.
Yes.
And just having that, like putting them down and just having tactile. And if it's rolling dice, so it's putting little hexagons down or, you know, figuring stuff out. And I don't know, it does something different to your brain. It resets it. It rewires it.
I have been doing, rather than board game, I've been getting away from screens and doing Myrtle, the book, the puzzle book. Have you played Myrtle, the puzzle book? It's good.
No,
it's good.
But I love fun.
I love those kind of logic puzzles, you know, really fun.
I love those logic puzzles.
So good. And horror themes, so there you go. Perfect. Grant says, I'm a card game player myself. I play Arkham Horror, the card game based on H.P. Lovecraft, more pulpy than straight up horror. Fantastic game, but strictly for the more nerdy amongst us than the normies. So that was the one you were discussing earlier, right, Alex? Arkham Horror.
I think what Grant is trying to say is that it's actually really difficult. I've never won a game.
Okay.
I've got it and I've never won a game. So he must be good.
Amazing. Bird says Betrayal at House on the Hill is a quintessential one, which Alex, you've mentioned. Some personal faves include Fury of Dracula for its asymmetrical hidden movement, Dark Moon, which I found is one of the best games to mimic The Thing, and of course Final Girl, one of the best single player games I've come across. Amazing. Bex says Horrified is so fun for the classic Universal monsters. Love that. Stephen Mitchell says, I was a big fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street board game, where you have to work out which player is secretly Freddy before they all get killed. Amazing.
Oh, that sounds fun, actually.
So I guess another one of those werewolf-esque formats, right? But
it's a brilliant mechanic.
Yeah,
it's a brilliant mechanic.
So good. Chris Newton says, I'm stating the obvious here, but Atmosphere is probably the best game ever made. Specifically, Atmosphere 4, Countess Elizabeth Bathory Vampire. I've not played that one.
She is out there. So yeah, all of the sequels have got different characters instead of the gatekeeper. And Elizabeth Bathory, she is like a kind of cyberpunk style vampire. And you know, as they get on, he gets all maggoty. Like she gets more and more like things on her face, like all these metal implants, and she's getting
Maybe that should be the one that we all play together. Then that sounds good.
We could do that.
John says Escape the Dark Castle is a really fun little game. Basically randomly create a dungeon out of 15 cards and then try to escape, and the illustrations are a really cool mix of Mike's holding it up on camera as we speak.
Mike's got it.
So much fun, this game, and it looks so good as well. I'm so glad that was mentioned. This is a cracker.
This sounds like up my street, actually, that it's just 15 cards. Is that it?
Yeah, and you can swap them around, and it's got like I think it's fighting system is like a kind of like it feels like a bit of like an entryway into sort of Dungeons and Dragons mechanics. Because it's got like one of those like a really interesting dice with like the more than 12 sides and 8 sides.
Some sides.
You need 2 to do that.
It's a polyhedron.
But yeah, it's loads of fun. It's loads of fun, and you get given characters as opposed to making up your own characters. But I think you can make up your own character in there if you want to. I think so. It's been a while since I've played it because my partner and I were just absolutely obsessed with playing Watergate. That's basically the game that I've played the most. I was wondering if I could bring it up because it's like true crime.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Is it horror, Mike?
Yeah, Nixon's one of the ultimate monsters. No,
it's pretty scary. Love it.
Love that. Oh, well, and also John says about Escape the Dark Castle, he says the illustrations are a cool mix of vintage grim fantasy and horror, which sounds very up your street, Mike, as well. So I'm not surprised you're a fan.
I didn't know anything about the mechanics of this. I do the same thing with wine as well. If I like the drawing on it, or the illustration on a label, I'll just be like, whatever.
Love this. This sounds great from Mike Leach. He says, technically a role-playing game, but Dread is a great game which incorporates Jenga. So for every decision you make, you have to remove a Jenga piece, and if the tower collapses, your character dies. That sounds fun.
I've heard of this. I would love to play this.
Great.
Yeah, it's really intriguing to me. Like, I love the idea of Jenga as a mechanic. I played a complicated big Euro style board game the other day, and one of the mechanics was like tic-tac-toe. It was like a little tic-tac-toe board in the corner, and if you lined things up, you got bonuses and stuff, and I'd never seen it incorporated into a board game before. But I've never heard of Jenga as a mechanic, not as the game itself. That's awesome.
Jenga makes me quite anxious as a game, though. It's quite nerve-wracking, isn't it? Like physical
Imagine
games.
that, and then you're going to die.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, because Jenga's so loud when it collapses as well, that somehow makes it more stressful, doesn't it? I think, you know, it's like, oh no. It's
always played on a wooden table.
Yeah. Yeah, because we haven't really spoke about like those kind of games that are more physical in terms of like your reaction time and stuff. Like, Alex, have you played that game Geister Blitzer or whatever it's called? Geister's Blitz. It's like got a German name. There's probably loads of games out there like it, but it's basically like you've got loads of little characters in the middle, and it's all like haunted house themed. There's like a ghost and a creepy owl and all this stuff, and you turn over a card, and whatever character is on the card, it's like the first person to grab that is the winner, and everyone else loses, basically.
Oh, no, I haven't.
There are like red herring cards where you'll get the ghost,
games.
but it's the wrong colour, and then in the corner there's an owl, but it's the right colour, so you've got to grab the right one, and there are more rules that you can layer on. It's really fun, especially like as a drinking game, but it's incredibly stressful. It is like, it ended in literal screaming at each other in the middle of Draft's board game bar in London when I played it.
Punching each other.
Phenomenal stuff. Ian O'Toole says, I'm a big board game nut here. My job is illustrating board games. Hello, Ian.
Oh, we had Ian. He replied on the Kickstarter.
Yes,
I've got some of his games.
Right, you've got some of his games, haven't you? Yeah.
His stuff is great. Honestly,
so good.
I checked out his site the other day when I saw him messaging, and I was just like, just the amount of stuff this guy's done is so cool.
I love this, but he's not been able to do anything horror so far. All of his games. Was it you, Alex, that was saying he's designed some really sweet, wholesome games?
Oh my god, fit to print. You're a little woodland. You're running a little woodland newspaper. All the little stories of what's happening in your woodland.
I love that.
It's so cute.
That. But yeah, Ian says, the best horror games I've played are Final Girl, Mansions of Madness, and Horrified. I don't know Mansions of Madness. Do you know that one, Alex or Mike?
No, it sounds Lovecraftian to me.
It does. It does sound Lovecraftian.
He's also mentioned Kingdom Death Monster, which I think I should say I played once on one of those tabletop simulator games. And literally, there was an hour of admin because we ended up punching a lion in the balls. Like, what? And then we had an hour of admin to figure out all of the ramifications of having punched this lion in the balls.
Wow.
True story. If you're a Kingdom Death Monster, you'll understand that reference.
Okay. Jax sent us a very, very long message. I don't have time to read it all, but she said, now you're speaking my language. I love board games and horror especially. She gave us a list of suggestions. This one sounds interesting. Mixtape Massacre, a cool board game where you get to play the slasher hunting the characters in a town. Or inversely, you can play Escape from Tall Oaks, where you play characters trying to escape slashers coming to kill you. It's cooperative until it's not, because there can only be one winner. Love this.
I love that. Yeah. You've also got to help each other, because otherwise you're not going to get to the end. Yeah, that's fun.
That's good. And then turn on each other at some point. Adam Wybray has also said Mansions of Madness. He says he's given me the most joy. I find it as involving as an adult as I found playing fighting fantasy game books as a child. Amazing. In terms of TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games.
Tabletop role-playing games, yeah.
In terms of TTRPGs, some of my happiest memories from university are playing all-night sessions of Vampire the Masquerade. Our campaign was set in Elizabethan period, and my character, a Nosferatu poacher, was violently against the earliest Enclosure Acts. Excellent.
This is what I mean. Like, there's so much rich story, and you can create like really specific memories with a specific group of people that you will have forever. It's just so good.
We should wrap up. I'll finish with this comment from Rich, another famous IP that we haven't yet mentioned. Rich says, there have been several Buffy the Vampire Slayer board games. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the game, released by Milton Bradley in 2000, is actually well done and enjoyable for a game based on a TV show. One of the designers later contributed to Betrayal at House on the Hill, mentioned in previous posts. There's also Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the board game, released in 2016, which is supposed to be pretty good. Amazing. Alex, have you ever played any of the Buffy?
No,
games?
but I'm looking it up on Board Game Geek right now, and I'm excited to see. Yeah, there's two. There's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the board game, which is apparently the good one, and it looks a bit like Horrified. Actually, it's got like a whole. I guess you've got like little Sunnydale things, and there's an apocalypse about to happen, and you're sort of hopping around different locations, lots of cards. That could be fun.
Love this. Well, there you go, guys. We should wrap up. I want to finish by asking you, what is your favourite horror board game? I need to figure out if I have an answer for this myself, actually. Alex, let me come to you first. What's your favourite horror board game?
I'm just going to say Werewolf. I'm just going to say it because I've had so much fun narrating Werewolf games over the years. Like, if you're in my team in work, then at some point I'm going to narrate a game and I'm going to get you to murder your colleagues, and it's a brilliant way of getting to know each other and having a load of fun. And so I'm just gonna not overthink it and just say Werewolf.
I've got to agree with you there on Werewolf, and I'll also add in, for nostalgia's sake, I'll say Atmosphere, because come on. Mike, do you have a personal fave?
I think just because I just love the artwork so much, I'm going to say Escape the Dark Castle, and it actually just made me realise that I need to play it again very soon, because I haven't thought about it too much recently. And then obviously Final Cut.
And Final Cut. Obviously. Well, guys, thank you. I will include lots of plugs for Final Cut at the top and end of this episode anyway. But Alex, is there any last thing you want to say to people listening to this Final Cut before we sign off?
I don't want the end of the Kickstarter to be the end of our kind of conversation and relationship with the audience when it comes to Final Cut. So I'm so excited for people to finally get it and play it, and for them to share their experiences with us. And that's the thing that's going to give me a whole new wave of endorphins in the future. So just that. Thank you for your support. It means so much to us. And let's keep talking about it.
Please. And Mike, any final words for our listeners / backers?
I just can't wait to play it with more people and to hear other people's experiences of playing it and what their favorite cards are, and like all the different what I'm especially looking forward to is the different movies that come out of it, and how excited people get about that. And also, there are some plans about doing sort of expansions potentially in the future, and I just feel really, really passionate about this little universe that we've all made as well. So yeah, that's it really. I just cannot wait to see everyone enjoying a really fun card game. It's so much fun, honestly, and like as horror fans as well. Mm-hmm. It's just such a nice game just to like jump into and just quickly play with your mates, and then go off and watch the next horror movie.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I played it with some people the other day that had never played it before, and again, I think testament to your amazing game mechanics, Alex, at just how easy it was to pick up. And then the more that people played it, we played it once and it was quite quick, and I think for some people they were like, oh, let's play it again now, because I'm getting it and I'm getting into it. And we ended up playing about 4 games of it because they just got more and more like into the tactics of it and the gameplay and the world of it and everything. And that's what's so kind of rewarding about this game, I think.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. That's really lovely to hear.
Well, we'll be back soon, I'm sure, talking more nerdy things together at some point very soon, right? But guys, for now, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And that's it for our bonus episode on horror board games. Thank you so much for listening. And one more time, a huge thank you to my brilliant guests, my Final Cut co-creators, Mike Lee Graham and Alex Ayling. Loved that. Loved discussing board games with these two. And thank you all so much for sending in your comments and suggestions and your favourite board games. I'm so glad that there's so much interest in what we've been discussing and what we're doing right now. And I'm so excited by how many of you guys are excited by Final Cut. I cannot wait to get this game out into the world and let people play it. We're going to be releasing new updates, new reward tiers. We're going to try and arrange, as we hinted at there throughout that discussion, we're going to try and arrange some in-person events where we can play the games together in London or in certain cities around the UK. So there's so much more to come, and the best way you can keep on top of what's coming up the game is to support us and follow us on Kickstarter. So one more time, I'll say head to evolutionofhorror.com/Kickstarter, sign up, and if you can, please do support us and pick up your copy of the game. So we'll be back for season 10 of this podcast very soon. I'm going to be going on a little month trip around the US, which I'm very excited for. So I'm taking a little holiday. And by the way, US listeners out there, please do get in touch with me. Send me some recommendations. I'm going to New York, New Orleans, LA, Vegas, San Francisco, and a few other places. Drop me some recommendations, any horror-related recommendations for things I should visit, things I should go and see at any of those locations. But when I'm back mid-April, season 10 on Nature Bites Back will be kicking off, and that will be then running weekly. The podcast will be back as normal every week all the way up until Christmas, so not long to wait. Thank you so much for listening, and join us again soon for another episode of The Evolution of Horror.